Then we get introduced to W.P. Mayhew. Um, uh, the thing about Mayhew, and this is maybe not the most important thing, but I'm going to tell you anyway because I'm a literature professor and I care about these things. The joke with W.P. Mayhew is not a real person, but he is very closely based off a real person. He's a very famous novelist, one of the most important American novelists in history, and that he later went on to Hollywood to write movies, and he wasn't very good at writing movies, and his movies are they're not that good. His job is he's really primarily a novelist. But he just worked on some Hollywood films and it didn't go well. That author's name is William Faulkner. I don't know if you know William Faulkner. He wrote a novel called The Sound of the Fury and another one called Absalom, Absalom. And he wrote a novel called As I Lay Dying. And he wrote another novel called Sanctuary. And he wrote another novel called Light in August. And all told, he probably he wrote a short story. Sometimes 201 Teachers Teach. God, is it A Rose for Emily, maybe? I don't fucking remember that one. The point is that Faulkner's an extremely famous novelist, and that W.P. Mayhew, and notice that Faulkner's just like Barton Fink, a very successful writer that the critics like, who goes to Hollywood, doesn't go super good. So that's the point, and that's the point of that character. Is he's supposed to remind you? And actually, at one point, and the movie's really detail oriented. I was shocked how much detail there is in this film. When Barton Fink knocks on his trailer door, not trailer, but because he works in one of those second story apartments, just like Betty Schaefer did in Sunset Boulevard. He knocks there, and there's a sign on the door that says he's working on a movie called Slave Ship, which I just assumed was a joke because the character it seems like he's pretty racist. And I just assumed it was a joke that he's like working on a racist movie or whatever. But there is really a movie called Slave Ship, and guess who wrote it? William Faulkner. So I think, I don't know, the Coen brothers really know their old Hollywood history. That's the director. This movie is directed by the Coen brothers. You may know the Coen brothers from No Country for Old Men was really their big Oscar win, and they also did Fargo, and a whole bunch. They did a bunch of great movies, and then some crappy ones. But they're very good, the Coen brothers, and they did this movie. Sometimes I forget to mention these things. Um, with W.P. Mayhew, though, notice that W.P. Mayhew is introduced the exact same way that Charlie is introduced. Um, that what we hear, Barton hears sounds. Then, when he hears a sound, he wants to know what's going on the other side of that door. And he opens the right, and then out comes Bill Mayhew. And so he first he hears a sound, and it's covered by something. Charlie was covered by the wall, and W.P. Mayhew was covered by the bathroom stall, but then he exits. So first we hear, then we see. First we get the wallpaper, then we get behind the stage. And Faulkner, so I'm going to keep calling him Faulkner, but W.P. Mayhew is going to, offers to sort of help him out. And okay, anyway, I think I told you about this character now, so I think I'm probably all set there. All right, let's keep going. What am I doing next? I'm looking at my notes. Oh, Barton, back in his hotel room, hears noises from the other side of the wall. Not the wall that Charlie's on, but a new wall. Once again, the subtitles are not helpful here. He hears noises. Just like with Charlie, I wasn't sure if he's making noises, he's making sounds, but I can't tell if it's laughing or crying. They can sound kind of similar. When the next sound Barton hears against the wall is a sound that could be sex, but could also be violence. It's hard. Is the person right? It's hard to know. It's a repeated pattern. It's the same thing that Barton wants to know what's going on the other side of that wall. He wants to get involved. Okay, and then Charlie comes in and they talk about it. Charlie, by the way, has another one of these emblems that I've been talking about, where there's something on the surface, there's a cover and something is hidden. And it's a stupid thing, but Charlie has a tie, and it looks like a normal tie, but when you flip it over, there's a naked lady on the other side. Again, there's what you see, and then there's what's hidden underneath. There's a wall, there's somebody on the other side of that wall going through, I don't know what. There's a wall. There's someone on the other side of that wall, and they're going through I don't know what. Here's a stall door. On the other side is Bill Mayhew, right? It's a repeated thing that the movie comes back to again and again and again. Barton says that his job is to plumb the depths. This is generally not an expression my students are familiar with. Plumb, Plumb. It's where you get plumber from. To plumb the depths is to figure out how deep something is. Usually, by you take a weight and a cord and you toss it like into a lake or something, and you sink it all the way down the bottom, and you can see how deep it is when you pull up the cord. Um, the point of this is Barton, that he says his job is to plumb the depths, meaning to find out what's really going on with real people, because he thinks stories about rich people is just the surface. But if he can get underneath and find out what's really going on with real working class people. But please notice, plumbing the depths involves the surface, that's the top of the water, and the depths, what you can't see, what's under there. So that's another one of these moments where he's dropping down there to plumb the depths, to find out what's really, he wants to expose what's really going on in America, and really talk about what's real and not this fake nonsense. Um, okay, cool. Um, oh, there's a great little detail. It's called rack focus. But it's when a person is closer to the camera and then someone is behind the camera. And they can do a thing with the camera where I'm in focus, but my hand is not. And then they can change it so my hand is in focus and I'm not. That effect is used in this movie wonderfully. Charlie starts telling a story, and he's about to tell Barton a funny story, or talk. I forget what it is. But he's talking about something important to him, and the camera has Charlie in focus and Barton out of focus, but Barton's in front. Barton cuts him off, and the focus changes to Barton. So Charlie is blurred and Barton is. I maybe I'm getting that backwards, but the point is that the focus in the camera changing the focus indicates something big has happened, and it's a little detail to notice, but like camera work is important, and it really communicates well that literally the focus of the conversation has changed when Barton cuts Charlie off. Um, okay, cool. This is going really well. Um, Barton sees what he does. He calls it the life of the mind. And this is going to be a phrase that comes back to haunt him. But he calls it the life of the mind. Because the idea is that this is interesting, because this is part of what he does that kind of separates himself from people, right? Barton's whole thing is he's supposed to listen to regular, everyday people. And because he thinks rich people are fake and everyday people they're the normal people are like real. Um, but then Barton says that his job is the life of he's a writer, and his job is to think about the depths and the meanings in society and plumb those depths, and that what he's doing is the life of the mind, as opposed to what? As opposed to the life of the body. The life of the body is like coal miners or strippers, or right, people who use their body to make money. Um, so by saying that he's involved in the life of the mind, it's like he see how he's kind of cutting himself off from everyday people just talking about himself like that, because he's making a difference between them. It's not just like I have a job as a writer, you have a job as a coal miner, we both have jobs. He's like I do the life of the mind. And in some ways, maybe that's harder than physical labor, because the life of the mind is so difficult. Like he's making himself. He claims to be a friend of the everyday common people, but he actually ends up separating himself from them quite a bit. Um, and by the way, notice that when he's talking about the life of the mind, he's completely ignoring the fact that Charlie's body is in pain. Charlie has an ear infection and he doesn't feel good. Charlie's body is hurting right now, and Barton ignores that and talks about the life of the mind and what a hard time he's having working on this script. Like, people with earaches don't care about the problems you're having with writing a script for a fancy movie studio. Like, give me a break. So Barton thinks he's connected to the common man, but he's not. We can see he's not. It's one of the things that I mentioned. Do we know the same as the characters, right? When Jeff in Rear Window finds out that Thorwald is a murderer, that's when we find out Thorwald is a murderer. But here we're a little ahead of Barton. Barton thinks he's a friend of the working man, but we're watching the movie and we're like, are you though? You're not a good listener, and you make a big deal of the life of the mind like it's harder than having a regular job where you work with your hands. I don't know. I don't know if you're really the way you think you are. We can see Barton better than he can see himself. All right, I'll pick it up in the next video.